The new Gigabyte RTX 4070 Ti Gaming OC. Should you buy it or should you skip it? Because a lot of people seem to be skipping the 4070 Ti's. Well, let's find out by going over the performance numbers and see if this should be your next graphics card. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to We Do Tech. So, alrighty, before we get into anything else, seeing as everyone seems to just hate the new 40 series cards, especially the 4070 Ti here, I just wanted to make it clear, yes, the cards are expensive in general all around, doesn't matter from who it is. Yes, people will also call me a Nvidia shill in the comments just because I'm not going to make this entire video about me bagging on Nvidia for price hiking and all of that. So I'm already preparing myself for the comments. And then finally, yes, Nvidia should lower the prices. Will they? Probably not. If they do, it'll only be by a small margin because they still own the majority of the gaming GPU market. So they can do whatever they want. People will still buy their card. So there's not that much you can really do except not buy a graphics card and then just wait for prices to drop, which could take years. So it's going to be up to you to actually decide. So for this video, it's not going to be focused on Nvidia and everything. It's going to be focused on the card itself because there are still plenty of buyers who are looking to get a new card, especially something like a 4070 Ti here. And I want to go over the specifics, the performance and everything for those buyers because they still want to get the best card for their money, which is going to be higher as well. But this is going to be for them. But just before I begin, I want to find out from you guys, are you planning to upgrade to any of the new 40 series cards? Or are you sticking with your older card? What's your plans? Or are you possibly moving somewhere else? Let me know down in the comments below. Alright, so the 4070 Ti does have an MSRP of $800. Not that it's necessarily going to go for that, but the price is pretty much the same as the 12 gig RTX 3080 at launch. The gaming OC model is slightly more at $870 or 21,200 Rand for here in South Africa, while the Master, the top of the range version, is going for around $1,000, which is definitely a bump in price there. Now, I wasn't able to review any of the new RX 7000 AMD GPUs, but compared to the RX 7900 XT, the 4070 Ti is around $100 cheaper depending on which you go for, so at least it's beating out something in price-wise. Specs-wise, the 4070 Ti has less cores than the 3080 and a smaller memory bus, even compared to the 3070, which is a bit disappointing, but like we saw with the 4080, there is more to it, not just paper specs. Also, with the 12 gigs of VRAM and the much faster clock speeds, it does make up somewhat for that, which we'll go over. Now, after reviewing the 4090 Gaming OC, I am happy to see that this card is much smaller. It's smaller compared to my face as well. That 4090 was a massive thing. So luckily, you will be able to fit this card in your case. Possibly still not a mini ITX case, but in a mid tower, it's not going to be a problem even if you mount your AIO at the front. It still keeps the more toned down gaming design, but it will still look great in your system. Now, I do also have the dual bias switch on the card for your performance mode and also quiet mode, so you do have that. For I/O, you do get 3 DisplayPort version 1.4As and 1 HDMI 2.1 port. I would have liked an additional HDMI port as some other cards actually do have one, but at least I can use an adapter, although I need to go buy one. If you want to see more graphics card videos, definitely subscribe because I do have more to come for a new graphics card being released as well, so definitely subscribe for that. Now, power-wise, you do have the new 16-pin connector in the middle of the card, which isn't the greatest, and you do also have the new 16-pin power adapter with 2 8-pins instead of 4 8-pins like we had on the 4090. Now, the adapter is much easier to bend because there's not so much cables going to just 16 pins, but I will still say be careful because there hasn't been a lot of testing going on with these. So with the 4090, once they did burn out, hopefully it won't happen with these, but always just be careful not to bend it too much and make sure that you connect it all the way in. Now, one thing that I also noticed when actually trying to get the card out is that the release mechanism isn't actually at the top of the card, it's underneath, and getting your finger in there to actually pop it out, it's a bit of a struggle if you don't have tiny fingers. Now, as for power draw, the 4070 Ti has a rated TDP of 285 watts, and in most games the power draw range between 200 to 260 watts. But I did see spikes upwards to 280 watts as well on the stock settings. Compared to some of the other cards, that's actually pretty decent, where some of the 3070 Ti's actually even use more than that. So power-wise, it's decent enough. Now, as for recommended power supplies, depending on your system, but you would recommend something like a 600 watt power supply just to be safe. They will be able to go lower, it just depends on the entire system, of course. Now, as for cooling, this card does have a massive heat spreader, twice the length of the PCB. It does also have this massive cutout here at the back of the back plate, which does allow a lot of the air to pass through. It is actually quite larger than some of the other cards, even compared to like the 4090. So there's a lot more air ventilation going on. Just make sure that your case does have enough air ventilation, because otherwise that could be a bit of a problem. But anyway, as for how it did do a very good job with ambient temperatures of around 23 degrees. The card reached a maximum of 62 degrees at 72% fan speed. The fans do ramp up very quickly on the default fan curve option, where it ramps up from 0 to 50 just like that when the temps hit around 53 degrees. Now, my card didn't experience any coil whine, so I was happy about that. I did experience it on another 4070 Ti, so yeah, I'm happy about that, at least for this card. Now, as for how the Gaming OC 4070 Ti performed, I did pair it up with the very toasty i9-3900K, 32 gigs of Kingston's Fury Beast RGB memory running at 5600 MHz, and the Aorus Z790 Master. Review for that board is also on the channel, so if you want to see that, then go check it out. Now, I didn't do any 1080p tests because this card honestly destroys 1080p, so moving on towards 4040p with no DLSS and settings on Ultra. On 4040p, it was only a Plague's Tale and Cyberpunk on Ultra settings that actually didn't reach over 100 frames a second, but when enabling DLSS or FSR and ray tracing, we do get a nice up to 20 to 50% increase on the balance preset. Going up to 4K, the frame certainly drops a bit, but except for the bottom two, again, everything else reached over 60 frames a second on Ultra settings. Then when enabling a DLSS, you do get upwards of a 50% bump in FPS. Now, fortunately, I didn't have any of the other 3070 cards to actually test it on the new 3900K system, but I was able to compare it to the 3080 10 gig and also the 4090. On 4040p, the 4070 Ti was an average of 25% faster than the 3080, but 14% slower than the 4090. Not bad, seeing as the 4090 costs 50% more. In 4K, it was 22% faster than the 3080 and 16% slower than the 4090. Now, when it comes to cost per frame, the RTX 3080 actually did the best here. However, that was with second-hand pricing. If it was at the original MSRP, it would lose to the 4070 Ti. But the 4070 Ti still beats out the 4080 and 4090 when it does come to cost per frame in 1440p and 4K. However, if you can get the 3080 at a much reduced price point, then of course it will be even a better option to actually get compared to the 4070 Ti, so you do have that second-hand option. Now, moving on to non-gaming benchmarks, in a Blender, the 4070 Ti is around 44% faster than the 3080 and 24% faster than the 4080. In a spec view perf, it's a much closer game here with a it only being around a 10 to 20% difference between all of them. Now, as for the clock speed, the referenced Nvidia card has a boost clock of 2.61 GHz, while the Gaming OC hits a 2760 MHz. Now, that is only on a paper, and in game it actually ranged between 2820 to 2835. And again, that was on a stock setting, so if you wanted to overclock it a bit more, you will be able to. You do have the thermal headroom there, so if you do tinker around a bit, you should be able to actually get around the 3 GHz mark, although I didn't test it personally, but I believe you should be able to get that. So then, in conclusion, the 4070 Ti doesn't disappoint in performance, being able to play games at 4K and 60 FPS on ultra settings without a DLSS. Yes, it isn't the cheapest, costing $100 more than the previous 80 series card, but at least it's around 20% faster than the 3080. I'm trying to be optimistic here. However, if you already have a 3080, it's honestly not worth upgrading to, and you can have the option again of buying a second-hand 3080, which is a very good option depending on the price point. But looking at the second-hand market, they're also selling out pretty quickly as well, and because of that, prices is going to increase for them as well. So yeah, depending on the price point, if you can get them around like $500, then that's a pretty good deal. Otherwise, I would honestly just wait for like the 4070, see what's going to be in there. But if you're really in need for a new graphics card, you've waited for years and years and years now after lockdown because all of the prices went crazy there, then the 4070 Ti is definitely still a good option performance-wise. I'm not talking about pricing and all of that, because everything is just expensive. But just looking at the numbers, it is a good performing card, and if I was really in need, I would buy this card above the 4080. Now, we don't have the numbers for the 4070 and the 4060 Ti. We'll see how they perform, but for now, it's a good card, especially the Gaming OC here. It's not too expensive compared to the rest of the range, and then also it performed very well. It looks nice as well. I would have liked additional HDMI. That's the only complaint I have. Cooling is also very good. So yeah, that is pretty much it for my look at the Gigabyte RTX 4070 Ti Gaming OC. Good card to get. If you want to get it for yourself, I will leave links in the video description. I'm preparing myself for all of the hate comments in the description and all of the dislikes and everything, but there's nothing really I can do about that. I'm not forcing anybody to actually buy this card, and there's nothing I can do about it in videos. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys. If you did enjoy this video, please like, share, subscribe, comment like always. Big shout out to Gigabyte for sending the card over for review, and I will check all of you guys next time. What was that? Cheers, guys.